If you're innovating, creating, or making a difference, this show is for you. Welcome to Over Coffee. I'm Dot Cannon. Here on Over Coffee, we talk with artists and innovators about the process of changing the world in terms of what they do.
I was really fascinated by this type of art. Interactive stuff was moving. There were robotic pieces, these kind of things. And I thought, okay, this is what I want to do. The machine looks basically like an easel. We just asked people on the street to pull on those strings hanging out in front of the shop window on the street. That way they could make a painting. I wanted to build this large pinball machine in an obvious DIY way so that you could see the materials, you could recognize what it is in such a way that you get an understanding of how it was done.
Berlin-based artist, inventor, and educator Niklas Roy keeps interactivity and a sense of fun at the heart of his work as he creates fine art from technology. Niklas's creations have been exhibited worldwide in science centers, art exhibitions, and public squares. Visitors to his installations may find themselves riding futuristic space-type vehicles, pedaling a stationary bike to play a piano, or even scanning high-ticket plastic products in a competitive shopping game. Niklas says on his website that his goal is to break down the barriers of art, making it accessible and enjoyable for people from all walks of life. He accomplishes this objective not only by involving audience members in participatory experiences, but also by making his projects, plans, and schematics open source and available to fellow creators. Niklas, what first inspired your creativity? Creating cool machines or creating art?
Oh, this is really a good question. I mean, since I'm very young, I can remember that I wanted to become an astronaut, an artist, and an inventor. But I don't know in which order. So I was really always inspired by inventions and inventors, and I was always inspired by, well, art. Even though I had as a child, I had probably a very simple understanding of art. It was mostly classical art, and I think I was mostly inspired. What fascinated me was the skill that went into the paintings of the old masters. So I'm sorry, I cannot really answer this question, what inspired me first. But I was also always building machines, with construction kits. We had a really cool construction kit in Germany that was called Fischertechnik. That I think it was just popular in Germany. And with that, you could build really nice machines. And I've always done this.
I especially like your installation in the school. And I'm never going to be able to say the German. I believe it's KKPS for short for people like me. But with the pulleys where you have the children's artwork moving through the school in places previously inaccessible. It's enough to make me wonder who was especially, or what was especially supportive of your creativity when you were a child.
Well, I think we had quite a creative household. My mother was always working on some decorations, and then I was also doing this together with her. My father was an architect, sometimes took me to his work also, and then I could color some plans for him as a little, kids job or something like this. So this always interested me. And being creative always played a role in our family. So for me, that was just a very natural thing to do.
How much fun does that sound like growing up in that area? What was your creative journey like from there? What happened next for you?
Okay. So next, I've been then drawing quite a lot and always building these kind of little machines with my construction kits. But what I discovered then, that was actually really interesting. My father had a very young employee, and he was also a filmmaker, Super 8. He made Super 8 movies as a hobby, but super ambitious. He made a 1.5 hour science fiction movie where he built in his garden a spaceship, the set of a spaceship, and he filmed in there for several years. And my father took me to the screening of his film, and I was totally hooked. I thought, what? You can do something like this yourself? Then I also started filmmaking. also on Super 8. And at the same time, I'm born in the, beginning of the 70s. When I was young, home computers became a thing as well. And I was super fascinated by that as well. So I also found a computer club in the neighborhood where I had access to a home computer, basically, and I started programming. And then when I was, I think, maybe 10 years old, I had myself my first computer. And then I was also programming a lot. So basically, my youth was always in between filmmaking, programming something. Then later, when the computers became more powerful, I also started to make computer animation. And then after school, it was the big decision for me in which area I want to go on. And I did not really understand how I could make films professionally because it's mostly a freelancer business, and I did not know how I could enter this. But I understood that for computer animation, you have companies and there you can apply and eventually probably get a job. So this is what I've done after school first. I made 3D animation. And then because I knew so much about film, I became a visual effects supervisor in the film business to bring those two worlds together, the filmmaking and the computers. Yeah, and then after a while, I found this all not so interesting anymore. And I wanted to do something more hands-on. I think what annoyed me most about the computer animation is that you can really literally build very beautiful things, but you can never touch them. And nowadays it's different. Nowadays I could build something in a CAD program and I could just 3D print it or cut it with a CNC router or whatever. But back then there was no chance for me and I wanted to make something more tangible. This is why I started then to drop out of the film business and basically start to build machines.
You dropped out of the film business, built machines, and what was your first installation like from there?
Well, it is also a little bit of a longer journey. We are keeping this short here now, but if we would keep it real time, then it would take 50 years now to for this podcast. So there was actually a festival in Berlin. I moved to Berlin because of a job in the film industry, and there was a festival. It was called Transmediale, that was about media art. And I was really, really fascinated by this type of art. I have not seen something like this before. Interactive stuff was moving. There were robotic pieces, these kind of things. And I thought, okay, this is what I want to do. And although I was really fascinated by it, I thought a bit that this could also be done better. And I was a bit naive. I thought there wouldn't be anything better in that field. But later I had to learn that there is a lot of better stuff. It's just a matter of curation, whether it is shown or not. So, but this was the beginning in this kind of media art world for me. And the very first thing that I have done, the first thing that became really popular is a Pong game that I have built, a physical Pong game. So that was working with a relay computer, and the display was basically motors and pulleys and strings, and you could move some white plastic square. White plastic square was the ball, and the white plastic rectangles were the bats, and you could move them with a joystick, and they were moved with a motor, and you could play it like the normal Pong game, but it was really a physical reinterpretation of the digital game, which is in itself a digital reinterpretation of a physical game. So it is some sort of interesting loop. If you translate something back and forth, there usually comes something funny out.
I would encourage anybody listening to take a look at your website, where that's just the beginning. You've got all kinds of incredibly cool things. I was wishing that I could play your Galactic Dimension myself. When you do a project like Galactic Dimension, what's the creative process like?
So Galactic Dimension, I mean, we have to explain a little bit what it is. So this is a very large pinball machine, 3 by 6 meters. You have to translate this to American measurements. I have no idea.
In U.S. measurements, that would be just under 10 feet by just under 20 feet.
So that was for a science center in Germany. And that science center, they made an exhibition about pinball machines. They had from San Francisco quite many pinball machines that they wanted to show. And the original concept of science centers is always also to not just show science or technology, but also invite artists that they can also have a perspective on it. And that particular science center has a very interesting architecture because it looks a little bit like a spaceship, and the exhibition floor has ramps and hills and valleys. And there was this one ramp in the exhibition space, and I thought, okay, this is where I want to make something, and I just want to build a very large pinball machine on it. And then I also thought that I'm actually quite a big fan of science centers, but I always have the problem that I find the exhibits there, and now I'm generalizing a little bit, but I think it is really true in most cases. I find them inaccessible in an intellectual way. I think that they are built so well that if you go there as a kid, for example, then you can see an interesting scientific phenomenon, but they're built in a way that doesn't encourage you to try it out yourself because they're just built so perfect that you don't even understand anymore how they are built. And I wanted to do this in a different way. I wanted to build this large pinball machine really in an obvious DIY way, so that you could see the materials, you could recognize what it is. For example, as a ball, I took a very lightweight ball from a ball pit, and then to move it around on the play field, I used hair dryers, so I could just blow it over the play field, and the bumpers were built out of normal fans. They were configured in a little bit of a different way, but there were a lot of things to discover which you could know from the household. And overall, it looked like really self-made, but very well self-made. So on the first glance, it's just a huge pinball machine. And if you look a little bit closer, and kids are quite good at looking closer and looking at details, then they recognize all the stuff that is in there. So that was a little bit the idea behind, to have this, to open up the process of making in the finished piece in such way that you get an understanding of how it was done.
We should make the point that on your website, you have open source. You have a lot of Creative Commons license instructions on your projects. You even teach at one point on your YouTube channel how to make a music box with windmills, which is really cool. Where's that perspective coming from? It's not, oh, this is my art. You're reaching out and sharing stuff.
That is really a good question. Well, first of all, I don't understand the protectiveness, especially in the art world. Also has probably something to do with experience that I had myself when I was in my young 20s, when I started to go out, and I also went to art openings myself. And I remember there was one, and I found the exhibition quite nice, but there was something shown and I did not know how it was made. So I asked the artist and he didn't want to tell me. And I found this so stupid. I don't know why he didn't tell me. Maybe he didn't take me serious or something like this, or made a joke or so. It was, in retrospect, it was not so complicated. He could have just said it. But this is something that I still remember. And I thought I don't want to be like that later then, when I also had made some stuff that was interesting for others. And then it was also a bit of a general movement in the media art world that, there's always the hot topic in the media arts. Currently, we are at AI. Before it has been NFT and blockchains. And well, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, it was a lot about these kind of legal rights, copyright issues. And I found the position to be very open. That just made a lot of sense to me. And now when I think about it, now I'm making also more public art projects. And there, anyway, I find this just the right approach. I think if you're dealing with public money, and I don't know exactly how this is in the US, but in Europe, or at least in Germany, there is still quite some substantial cultural funding. And I think if I profit from this, if I get paid by the society to do what I'm doing, then I should also be open with the rights in return, so that others can also, use it in whatever way they want, or restrict it a little bit. And I say it's just a share alike license and a non-commercial or whatever, but at least to open it up that people can get an understanding of how I've done the things that I made.
In fact, I would love to have you tell me the story of one such project that you did. You have your mosaic machine, which is what first drew my attention to your work. How did that project come about for you?
So a couple of years ago, I started with these we have those things that's called art in architecture. Whenever there is a public building built, then a certain percentage of the overall sum for the construction has to go to an artwork that accompanies this building. And a colleague of mine has told me, hey, Niklas, this would be something for you and you should actually enter this scene. And I didn't have it on my radar, but then I thought, oh, okay, well, why not? And he told me exactly how I would have to do this. So there was the idea that I basically that I make a catalog, send it to an artists association, and they will put me in a database. And that worked out super well for me. So I've done this, and then there are from time to time competitions, and either these are very open competitions or you are invited. And in that particular case, I have been invited to a competition, and it was about a public square. It's quite an interesting one. So I'm living in East Germany, in East Berlin here, and not far from my place, there has been the first, how would you call that, like prefab area with prefab buildings, with high risers that were like built out of prefab concrete. And that had its 50th birthday last year, this area. And at the beginning, when they erected all those buildings, they had quite nice public art also on the facades. But as you can imagine, 50 years later, there has changed quite a lot. So most of those facades are changed now because there's now heat insulation on them. So you don't see those artworks anymore. And overall, there was a lot of illegal graffiti all around the place. And well, they wanted to basically just spend more money on this area again to make it nicer, also to get rid of the graffiti. And then they made this art competition there, the city of Berlin. And I won it with the concept that you just mentioned, Maschinenmosaik or Mosaikmaschine, which is in English like machine mosaic or mosaic machine. It's both. It is a machine with which you can make mosaics, and it is a mosaic which is built with a machine. And the way how it worked, or my proposal, what it was, is I said that I would build an arcade machine, which would be on wheels. So like a little bit, I think hand truck is the word in English, that you could move around like a hand truck. And it has its own power supply in there. So I could just move around in the area with this arcade machine. And I wrote a program for it, which is a bit like a drawing game, basically. So with a joystick, you could make pixel drawings on this thing, 32 by 32 pixels. And then at the end, you could push a button and you get a printout on receipt paper of this mosaic that you have drawn. And at the same time, it's uploaded to the database of the website of the project, where it's then public. Everyone can see it. And that way I collected more than 500 drawings from the neighbors in this area over several weeks. And then I used a cutting plotter to make stencils out of those mosaics. And then together with a graffiti crew, we used those stencils to make new contemporary graffiti mosaics with designs by the neighbors in that neighborhood. And this is how we made the walls fresh and new, and they looked much better then, and they still look really good, and no one dared to paint over them, which is quite nice.
I'd encourage anybody listening to take a look at your YouTube channel and your website and get a look at this, because it's pretty amazing to see. We haven't said a word yet about either under construction or what you're doing right now. I'll let you choose. Which would you like to explore?
So yeah, we can talk about under construction. There is a festival in Belgium, in the city Namur. It's in the French-speaking part of Belgium. And The festival is called KIK, K-I-K-K, and I have a really good relation with this festival since its beginning. They invited me when they made their first edition more than 10 years ago, and since then we have always been in contact. And I've been given talks there. I've made workshops there, all kinds of things. We always come up with ideas what we could do together because we have a bit the same interest and the same humor. And most importantly, maybe, is that the chemistry works really well between us. So we understand each other super well. And they had a new permanent space. And I have to describe the space because it's crazy. So this is it's really an old town. It's a rather small town, looks very medieval. And they have this castle on top of a hill. And now they even have a cable car from the city center going up to that castle, and they built a new building there. Well, it's not a new building. It was a pavilion from, I think, the last World Exhibition in Milan. So they disassembled the building in Milan and set it up on top of that hill again, and it's a big glass dome. It looks a little bit like the evil lair of a James Bond villain on top of the city. It's really wild. And you go up there just with a cable car. It's just approaching it is already super wild. And the idea of them was to make an exhibition also a little bit which goes in the direction of STEAM education. So they wanted to address young people and make some sort of an art, technology, interactive show, but they did not really know exactly what they wanted to do. And they thought maybe, well, the idea was to ask me that I can come up with an idea. And then they had also quite a nice budget so that I could also invite other people. And then basically my partner Kati and I, we curated this together and we invited some friends and made this show under construction. And the under construction, the idea there was, well, we thought if we make there an exhibition, if you make really very interactive pieces, then like a science center, you should basically have some sort of a workshop where you can fix things also all the time, because audience will destroy what you build. Let's face it, that's the reality. So we thought, why not make it like this? We don't even claim that this will be a finished exhibition which works from the beginning to the end, but it will be a construction site where we constantly work on the exhibition. We also had the additional problem that all the friends that we invited, they did not have time at the same time. So over the whole exhibition period, they came over and we were working with the audience, or while the audience was visiting, we were working in the exhibition, constantly coming up with new installations and trying them out right away. It was it was really quite a roller coaster ride. It was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun, just constantly building stuff. What was the hardest is that it just became louder and louder, the exhibition with every day. We had so many like blowing machines, vacuum cleaners running, and it was just louder and louder. And well, at some point I was also like, no one is allowed anymore to build a loud installation. But then the other artists complained because they said, Niklas, you have built already so many loud installations. We also want to have a loud installation. So it just became more. At the end, I was just wearing earmuffs the entire time when the show was running. Yeah, but it was a huge success. People loved it. We had many people who came several times, and we broke all the visitors' records of that place. And it became a little bit like the secret, yeah, probably like a family hit, you know? This is where the families went when they had a day free last summer in that area.
That was my impression looking at the video. It's like, how can you possibly go through this only one time? I saw the mini golf. I saw the bicycle where they're playing the piano. I don't even remember everything that you had in there. It was incredible. We were halfway joking before about instant art career. That just sounds like a lot of fun. But what do you tell young people today when they say, I would like art to be my career? How do you make a viable art career in the crazy world we've got?
Oh, this is dangerous. I'm not really sure if I would encourage them to go for an art career. Well, yeah, okay, let's be honest here. I think that art can also be a very nice hobby. So, I mean, art is unfortunately not a very fair business also. This is the problem with art is, or with the art world, if you take it really seriously, it's that there is not a good measurement for making good art. It depends a lot more on other factors whether you become successful in the art world. And now I'm generalizing quite a lot because there is not the art world. When I say something like this, I would say that I'm more referring to some sort of an like fine art gallery art world. There it's a lot about personal connections, maybe. But then again, fortunately, art is much bigger. There exist many art worlds where you can survive. Like for me, what worked out very well are those kind of public art contracts. But what doesn't work very well for me is this kind of gallery art world. But for that, I would probably also have to go to exhibition openings all the time and shake hands and, talk nice to the people or something like this. Maybe that's not so much my thing. So yeah, I don't really know what I could recommend. Well, to give a really good advice, I would like to know that person better and see the skills of that person better. If there is really a chance for that person to, well, also then to make a living in the art world, because otherwise I think it can just become super frustrating. And then I think it makes more sense to make another job, because I mean, most of the people, they have more talent than only making like art, and there are also other creative professions. And then really making art can also be just a very nice thing to do in your spare time in parallel together with other people. So I would not necessarily recommend to enter that path. And then if you probably also want to have family with kids and something, ooh, whoa, 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 whoa. And then also in the US where you have so little public funding,
That's true.
I'm really not sure. I know that friends from the US that they try then to become professors, basically, because this is how they can have a regular income at least. Yeah, it's hard, unfortunately.
Final question is the signature question for my podcast. If people could only get one thing from you about innovation, creativity, and making a difference, what would you like them to take away from your work as an artist, a maker, and an educator?
Well, and I have to choose now between those three, or what?
No. Anything that you want them to take away from your work. It doesn't have to be a choice. It can be all of them.
Okay. I know. Well, it's a different thing. I hope that they take away some sort of sense of humor and a little bit of happiness, and also to the artist colleagues who are making digital art, a little bit more color, maybe. I find that often art is a little bit dry also. And I think it could be, it can also, there can be a bit more humor in it as well. This is what I like the people to take away from my works.
Niklas, thank you for your time today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Dot.
You and I have been listening to fine artist, inventor, and educator Niklas Roy. Get a look at Niklas's colorful and engaging projects on his website, niklasroy.com, where you'll find a number of his open source plans and schematics. That is niklasroy.com, spelling his first name Niklas. Also, subscribe to Niklas's YouTube channel, where you'll see some fun videos of his interactive projects, as well as his tutorial on how to build a windmill-powered music box. When you type in Niklas Roy on YouTube, his channel should come right up. And that concludes this edition of Over Coffee. Thank you for listening. Listen to more Over Coffee podcasts at 2mavericks.com. That's 2 TWO Mavericks, Maverix. Be sure you subscribe. It's free by clicking the link on our website. Our music is royalty-free production music provided by Pond5 at pond5.com. I'm Dot Cannon. Here's wishing you a cappuccino day.